All right, let's take an even closer look at the case so far from a legal angle. We're joined now by defense attorney Misty Marris. Great to see you, Misty. So, this former media executive, David Pecker, on the stand, 3 days now. You heard Caitlin, this is a build up, even though he really is a star witness. So in your view, how damaging to Trump has his testimony been? Has he established that there were indeed exchanges of money, information, to keep these negative stories out of the paper for Trump's political benefit?
Well, that was exactly what he testified to, Fred, and his testimony is absolutely key. And that's because, as Caitlin pointed out, everything is a building block from the prosecution's perspective. David Pecker, it makes so much sense that he was the first witness called. And that's because he's setting the tone for everything. He's explaining what the catch and kill was. He's speaking directly to Donald Trump's intent. On the stand during direct examination, he said that Donald Trump never mentioned his family. He never mentioned his daughter. He never mentioned his wife. He never mentioned his business. He was directly worried about the election, and that was the purpose behind these payments. So that's a critical piece for the prosecution to prove. And therefore, David Pecker's testimony, really, really important to lay that foundation that will serve as those building blocks for the rest of the case.
And why is that, so important in your view? Because it isn't necessarily illegal, for this publication to pay people, but it's an issue of, establishing that this was done in furtherance of a crime. So where is the prosecution going here?
Correct. And it is a little bit complicated. So first, it's the falsification of business records. That's qualifying these expenses as legal expenses. Now, that has to be in furtherance of another crime. The question then becomes, what's the other crime? Well, the district attorney during the examination of David Pecker said it relates to this New York election law, which says you can't conspire to impact an election through unlawful means. So what's the next step to that? What are the unlawful means? Well, that's likely going to be this violation of campaign finance rules, meaning that these payments should have been identified as campaign contributions. So David Pecker's testimony directly relates to that, because the argument against that from the defense perspective is that these payments were done for any other reason other than the election. Well, David Pecker testified that this was directly related to Donald Trump wanting to be in the White House and his election efforts. So you can see it's a little bit of chain of logic, but it's really important for that foundation to be laid.
I mean, these jurors have to follow, all these nooks and crannies here in order to kind of connect these dots being established. So Pecker, may reportedly be asked about porn star Stormy Daniels today. What questions will need to be asked to link the payments to, Trump's 2016 campaign, even though you mentioned, they haven't been established as campaign donations?
So right now, Pecker is going to be on direct examination. A lot of the questions related to the why. Why are we doing all of this? Why are we buying these stories relating to Stormy Daniels? Now in the cross-examination, the defense is going to try and, number one, go after Pecker's memory. They're going to talk about that he has a non-prosecution agreement, so there's an element of self-interest. And they're going to try and say that much of what Pecker testified to in his direct examination related to conversations that he had with Michael Cohen. So they're going to try and take Trump and have him a million miles away from these conversations. That's going to be the defense goal. Now, keep in mind, prosecution gets the opportunity to do a redirect where they'll clarify some of those points. And it's specific to Stormy Daniels, because that payment, the timing, was at a time when prosecutors, as per their opening statement, the Trump team was in damage control mode because the Access Hollywood tape had just come out. So they would do anything and everything to suppress the story because of the election. And that's why Pecker's testimony is so critical to the prosecution's case.
And then, quickly, as for court matters, is it problematic at all that Judge Merchan has yet to rule on the prosecutor's allegations of gag order violations? Like, for how long, should Trump be able to say what he says, according to the prosecutors, continuously violating the gag order?
Well, you know what? 4 more allegations by the prosecution have just been added via order to show cause. So now we're up to like 15. I think he'll rule soon, but he really is being cautious because he does not want to tread on the First Amendment right. It's a limited gag order, and I do think that he wants to have a very reasoned decision, which is why you're not seeing a decision from the bench. You're seeing him reserve decision, go through each and every one of the prosecution's claims that the gag order was violated, and ultimately a decision. I think we're going to see it soon. I'm surprised we haven't seen it yet, but I think we're probably going to hear about that either this week or early next week.
All right. Misty Marris, thanks so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Have a great